we will see investment increased, the Navy expanded, the Army grown, the Air Force upgraded, war-fighting readiness restored, NATO strengthened, the nuclear deterrent guaranteed, advanced technology developed, and jobs created in every nation and region of this country.
The Secretary of State says he wants to send a strong message to Moscow, but the messages he's sending are profoundly weak. Surrendering our fishing grounds for an EU defence pact that doesn't offer a penny in return. Surrendering the Chagos Islands to the delight of China and Iran, and surrendering our army veterans to the lawyers. To cap it all, and after so much hype, producing a damp squib SDR that is overdue, underfunded and totally underwhelming. Our armed forces deserve a lot better than this.
He says 62 recommendations were made by the authors in 130 pages, talking about a new era of threat, demanding a new era of defence, learning the lessons from Ukraine, making armed forces stronger and British people safer. John Healey ran through some of the new measures, some of the new commitments, more subs, more building of munitions factories. Indeed, a bit on recruitment as well. But there we heard James Cartlidge, the Tory spokesman, challenging him on the money, saying the money is not there. There's no guarantee of the 3% of GDP spending that is required to meet the commitment.
Now, on Thursday, the Defence Secretary said in an interview with The Times that reaching 3% was a certainty. But by the weekend, he had completely backtracked to 3% being just an ambition. And today, the Prime Minister was unable to give a date by when 3% will be reached. Why? Because the Treasury haven't approved a plan to pay for it.
Again, John Healey said, I have no doubt we will meet 3% by 2035, but still again talked about an ambition to meet that 3%. And also there was a bit of challenge on the money that's being spent on the Chagos Islands.
The US backed the deal, NATO backs the deal, Five Eyes backed the deal, Australia backs the deal, India backs the deal. So how, on this national security issue, have the opposition got themselves on the wrong side?
Let's have a chat through with Terry Stiasny, our political correspondent. A lot to go through, Terry, but what were the top lines for you?
Well, I think the top line was really this ambition to get to 3% within the next Parliament. And as you just said, not saying he expects to do that, but no absolute commitment, but also saying that there could be no investment in the military without reform. And I think it was interesting. It was a point that Helen Maguire picked up there for the Liberal Democrats. How do you reverse the decline in the armed forces that John Healey was promising to do? He said there would be 76,000 full-time service people, soldiers in the next Parliament. That's from around 74,000 now, but it's still been falling. And he'd also been talking about how you try to reconnect the nation, in his words, with the people who defend us. So talking about having more things like a 30% increase in cadets, having a gap year scheme and having more reserve forces. So he wants to encourage more people to think about joining the forces in the hope that fewer of them leave.
And questions about how the armed forces, as you say, have been hollowed out. Particularly, he wanted to focus on the fact that there would be an extra commitment, an extra £1.5 billion of new funding to improve accommodation for service families. But he also talked more about the nuts and bolts of what a new defence force would look like. A £15 billion investment into the Sovereign Warhead programme, creating, he said, 9,000 jobs. Submarine production every 18 months to grow the nuclear fleet by up to 12, supporting 20,000 jobs. That's £6 billion to build 6 new munition factories, and making the UK at the leading edge of innovation in NATO. Interestingly, he said we prevent wars by being strong enough to win them. But there was very much this sense of the need now to bring everything together to try and create a force, a modern force for the future, wasn't there?
Yes, absolutely. And he was making the point that the example of Ukraine, and particularly obviously the most recent attacks by Ukraine into Russian territory, suggests that whoever's got the new technology fastest has an advantage there. So he's saying that not only does he believe defence can be an engine for growth, but also that you can, the more you can do with technology, the more effective that is going to be. Now, that was questioned by his Conservative opposite number, James Cartlidge, who said, well, the government, he suggested, has only purchased 3 reconnaissance drones rather than doing more in terms of
number
buying.
Staggering,
yes,
actually.
I would like to check that one.
Did I hear him say there's only 3 drones that have been bought?
How many military drones have the government actually purchased for our own military since the general election? Written answer to me, Mr. Speaker, the answer, not 3,000, not 300, 3. They've purchased 3 reconnaissance drones since the election and not a single one-way attack drone.
I think, in essence, this was the whole idea of addressing the public to the idea of changing threat, changing demands, a new era now requiring more commitment. But, as you said, Terry, still no absolute commitment to meet that 3% target of spending by 2035. And it's a long way off, and the threats are now, aren't they?
Yes, well, exactly. I mean, I think we heard that from Keir Starmer very much this morning, that we are living in a new and more uncertain world where there are these imminent threats. But of course, we are talking about what is going to be done over the next 10 years. And so, yeah, these things, as everybody you talk to about defence says, these decisions take time. Building things like submarines take time, even if you're building one every 18 months, as the government has promised to do. How can you accelerate that if the threat is now?
Terry, thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, the world has changed. We must respond. The SDR is our plan for change for defence, a plan to meet the threats we face, a plan to step up on European security and lead in NATO, a plan that learns the lessons from Ukraine, a plan to seize the defence dividend from our record increase in defence investment to boost jobs and growth throughout the United Kingdom, and a plan to put the men and women of our armed forces at the heart of our defence plans. Better pay, better kit, better housing. Through the SDR, we will make our armed forces stronger and the British people. The threats we face are now more serious and less predictable than at any time since the end of the Cold War. We face war in Europe, growing Russian aggression, new nuclear risks and daily cyber attacks at home. Our adversaries are working more in alliance with one another, while technology is changing the way war is fought. We are in a new era of threat, which demands a new era for UK.
I'm more than disappointed that I only received the SDR 2 hours ago at 3:30 after the journalists. Now, hearing the Prime Minister absolutely right, we have entered a new era, one defined by international instability, geopolitical conflict and global uncertainty. Perhaps not since the end of the Cold War have we faced such a myriad of threats to our defence. A barbaric Russian imperialism under Putin threatening Ukraine's freedom and NATO security. A Trumpian White House defined by its total indifference and even antagonism towards the defence of Europe. And the rising threat posed by China, as well as regional pariah states like Iran and North Korea. Taken together, these threats pose a once-in-a-generation risk to our country's defence. Meeting generational risks will require making generational commitments. So I welcome the government's readiness to accept all the recommendations outlined in today's Strategic Defence Review. It is frankly staggering, however, that we still do not have a clear answer to the vital question: where is the money coming from to fund these ambitions?